What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the altar again, and this time we got part two with Lightworker. This time we are here with Joe. It is great to have you here, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hell yeah, dude. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's so awesome to have you here, man. So, your last album, Fury by Failure, was one of my personal favorites of 2020. Definitely my top 10 lockdown soundtracks, as I call it back in the day. So, fantastic album. And you managed to do it again with How the Beautiful Decay. Just a phenomenal record. When you open up with Hellscape and the way that you just managed to end with the title track, truly a magical experience. But for people who haven't heard this full-length album yet, do you feel like that the singles that we have heard so far, such as Burn Scar, First Light, or Evergreen, is maybe like a good representation of this whole album, or is that just the tip of the iceberg?
That's a really good question. I've actually been thinking about that myself. And to be honest, I guess the way we kind of looked at it when we were selecting some singles for this record was First Light is just it's a band favorite, so we're like, dude, we have to release that one. That was actually initially supposed to be the second single. The first one that was going to be Burn Scar, actually, because we feel like that kind of encompasses everything that we do as a band. Where it's got a lot of riffs. It's got, the fast, after you get past the intro, it's got that fast, like, circle pit kind of, first verse. And then it has like a mini breakdown and then a full blown like riff breakdown. And so we were just like, oh, that would be kind of cool. But our label, and we're very thankful they made this decision. They were just like, how about just doing First Light first? And I was like, you know what? I kind of like that idea because it's a fast song. It's also a shorter song, so it's kind of like a quick jab right before you do the right hook. You know what I mean? So I feel like those two songs are definitely representative of the album. Evergreen, I would say is not. I think it's one of those songs that we're always going to kind of have on a record because we like melody, and we love a lot of pop music. But first and foremost, we're a metal band, you know what I mean? And so I think that one was kind of just pushed out there. I don't know about like other bands and whatnot, but at least with our band, we like the fact that our parents have at least one song that they can listen to without plugging their ears and stuff too.
Hey, you know what? That's more than could be said about maybe 99% of the bands that I've interviewed. So congratulations. Forget about the approval of the charts or Billboard or anything like that. Approval of your folks, that's when you know you made an accomplishment right there.
No, honestly, man, like we've had like our parents come out to shows, like different parents, and like whenever we play kind of the songs that are more melodic, like it's kind of cool to have them into it, and then they'll like show their friends who might have been into like, Sabbath back in the day or Maiden or something like that. And then they'll actually check out the band. They're like, yeah, I can stand the hollering stuff, but like, yeah, I really like it when you guys get melodic. And then we get like older fans too.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a win-win. But yeah, I think that's something that we're always going to do. But I think with this record, sonically, I think First Light and Burn Scar are a little bit more in tune with that. I take it you've heard the whole record then.
Yep.
Cool.
Sorry.
Yeah. So,
I heard it first. I heard it before anybody else watching this can. So, and I'm grateful for that. That's one of the many great perks of being able to do what I do here. So.
Yeah. So I guess my question, I mean, if I may ask you a question, I mean, would you say that what I just said is a little bit more accurate?
Well, yeah, 100%, because I love Fury by Failure, but, when I love a band's album, I do, and they put out a new one, I do approach it with a little bit of trepidation because of, the thing that you never want to have, whether you're making an album or listening to an album, and that's expectations. I felt like, there were big shoes to fill because Fury by Failure was, again, a masterpiece. I consider that to be a flawless record. This managed to be on the same level of that. It reminded me like why I gravitated towards you. It had the same sort of surprise factor. It had your own signature style in it. I've interviewed thousands of bands that fall into the sort of genre and subcategories that you guys would, but you guys are a breath of fresh air, and I think this proved that you have your own craft. So I think this is a fantastic album. I do love tracks like Unmaker, and I do love that you had a collaboration with Wolves at the Gate too. Great guys and a fantastic band. And I do love Hellscape. I think that's a fantastic opening track as well.
Thank you. Yeah, Hellscape we will actually be playing on our upcoming tours. That's also another personal favorite. To be honest with you, we're only playing like two songs off of Fury now live because we're very pumped about these new songs.
And normally I'd be pissed, but I'm pumped about these new songs too. So
yeah, man. I think also like I take it you're from like the New England area, right?
New York City.
New York, yeah. I think one thing that we're going to be conscious of though is the fact that we didn't get to hit those areas back during the Fury era because of the COVID thing. We really only got like maybe a third of an album release cycle for
Yeah.
Fury. You know what I mean? So I think we're going to try to be conscious of trying to maybe add another Fury song when we begin hitting the East Coast some more. We're creeping closer and closer to the East Coast. And to be honest with you, the East Coast, and this is just personal bias, but the East Coast is my favorite place in the United States. So
we bring it. That's what we do.
Dude, like, you go back and you look and you watch like the All That Remains live DVD or the
Oh, I love that. Nobody else I know saw that, so I'm really glad to hear you reference that.
Yeah, and people are just going nuts. And I know, like, that was, over, shoot, that's like, we're approaching 2 decades on that stuff. But
Fall of Ideals was still brand new, I think, when that record came out.
Yeah, I think it was that DVD was probably only released maybe a year later or something like that. It was pretty fresh. That's a funny thing about new releases these days. Back then, 15, 20 years ago, if you released a new album, it was new for at least a year and a half.
Yep.
Nowadays, like, folks are just kind of like after one year, they're already like that, Tyrone Biggums from the Chappelle Show scratching themselves. Yeah, you got to need more of them tracks, like
people want to consume. But this was worth the wait. This new album too. I think 4 years between these two albums, it really kind of left me missing and wanting more. And would you consider How the Beautiful Decay to almost kind of be like the sequel to Fury by Failure, or was this meant to almost signify a new beginning for Lightworker?
That's a great question. I think in many ways, the way we looked at Fury by Failure was it's a compilation of what we can do. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, hey, we can do the shreddy thing with songs like The Willing Martyr or kind of more like rhythmic stuff like Empire, but then we have like a couple of ballads on here. Then we have like a weird kind of genty song with Carly from Candiria, and I think before we even wrote a note on How the Beautiful Decay, we knew we wanted it to be heavier. And this is even pre-2020. I was just like, dude, I told Grayson, I'm like, I'm pissed. Like, I'm a pissed off individual. So I want the music to reflect that, and I want to be able to start digging in deeper. And he's definitely he definitely likes the poppier side of stuff, the more accessible side. Whereas, I like to dig into, I get into more of the Scandinavian, European stuff, I get into, I guess as far as newer bands go, I really like Bleed From Within, Fit for an Autopsy, stuff like that. That's just it. Because to me, they're really, I don't know. There's a sense of urgency to them that kind of mirrors like early Killswitch Engage, Unearth, early All That Remains, and but it's at another level. I think it. Where it's like, don't get me wrong, obviously Killswitch and all those bands I mentioned, they paved the path, and they're still releasing amazing stuff. Like I love the new Unearth record.
Oh
Like
my God, they are
absolutely,
still
it's
killing it.
so good.
Yep.
And so for me, I'm just kind of like, I'm like, hey, dude, like, kind of like nudging him, I'm like, hey, let's, like tread some Nuclear Blast Records territory, some Metal Blade Records territory. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
I'm
uh,
I'm sorry to cut you off. No, but like that's it has like a good nostalgia factor. Like I do see, like the early ATR stuff and the Kill Switch stuff and some As I Lay Dying influences. But I think with the times of, the Bad Omens and the Spirit Boxes, like I feel like that there's a little bit of the times, and I mean it as a compliment, a little bit of the current times within the DNA of Lightworker as well. It has a good throwback sound, but I think it has its own modern charm to it as well. So I think that's what sort of makes Lightworker unique, as it's a bridge between an older and a new one.
yeah, that's the great thing about being in your 30s. We
One of the few
we've
great
got,
things.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So we're able to kind of like, we were there for, like tail end of, like Earth Crisis and all that stuff, and then the beginnings of Aslay dying, 18 Visions before they went, radio, and now they're back to being heavy again. Atreyu and Kill Switch and all those bands we mentioned, but we've also seen the different waves that have happened. Like what I call like the neon era, where like
I call it
Prada.
bubble letter era of metalcore.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like that part, and and I didn't really gravitate to much of that stuff. So like, there was just only a select few bands like August Burns Red that I dug
Bless the fall.
from the era. But and then like I feel like there's kind of like there was a little bit of a lull for a while, but I feel like there's a third wave that's happening right now. You got Polaris, you've got Currents, Fit for King is also throwing it down. And what I like about them is they do have kind of the more radio friendly stuff, but then they'll still kick your ass. You know what I mean?
So, a question for you is, when you have these many different sides of your sound, because you have a very eclectic sound, but it's still light worker in the end for me. But do you feel like the heavier sides and the more melodic sides maybe expresses a different side, or maybe a different personality, or maybe a different version of who you are in a way? Or in the end, a light worker song is a light worker song and it very much expresses the same point of view?
That's a good question, man. I'm going to say that about every question that you ask. I love it. But I would say that for me personally, I think it depends on the song. As I'm thinking about it, right? I feel like a song like First Light was definitely there's such a dichotomy between like the verses and the outro breakdown, and then the chorus is very melodic and hooky. But and then there's stuff like Burn Scar where I feel like it's definitely, excuse me, there's a lot of peaks and valleys. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the things that I think that we across the board definitely find interesting, is like, um, because we also grew up loving bands like, Dillinger Escape Plan, Every Time I Die, Beloved, As Cities Burn, and some of those bands, especially Beloved and As Cities Burn, like their debut records hardly had any parts that repeated. You know what I mean? Like, and sometimes not even choruses. But it was still easy to digest because people wanted to digest it, I feel, because all the parts were engaging. So I feel like when it comes to Lightworker, we also keep in mind that we're musicians, and we try to also throw a bone to fellow musicians. Like for example, on Burn Scar, what we ended up doing was, I mean, we had that big long ass intro, and then then the first verse, but then the second verse sounds different than the first verse. And so for a musician, it's kind of like, oh cool, we're getting a completely fresh different part. Whereas opposed to like a lot of radio stuff, you've got the same sounding first verse as the second verse, you know? And then you got the chorus in between to break it up, and then you have the bridge and everything. But we try to be conscious of the fact that, like, hey, and metalheads too. Metalheads like it, I feel, when you kind of you don't deviate it from it, but it's like, hey, what can you expand on to make this song richer? You know what I mean? And I hope that's what we accomplish with a song like Burn Scar.
Do you
Um,
have you approached things from a conceptual standpoint too? Because I feel like that the music in itself, like if I were to listen to an instrumental version of Lightworker, I feel like it would be very thought provoking as well. So do you approach things from a conceptual standpoint, where maybe like lyrics or an experience or some sort of lyrical idea maybe helps guide the direction with regards to the music, or are you very much you need the music first before you could come up with any lyrics?
for this record, we came up with the title of the record before we like really started writing, and I wanted that to be kind of like at the, I wouldn't say it's strictly conceptual, but it was definitely in the back of my mind when writing the lyrics to this album. And I feel like during the writing of the record, I think society and everything that surrounded us also lended very well to the how the beautiful decay kind of theme, you know. um and I think the overall, what we wanted to do was we wanted the music to be able to, you know, like the name of the record was kind of like our guiding star, our North Star. And we're like, hey, do these songs sound like they belong under that title? So anything goes. We could write like an acoustic song, but does it make sense under that kind of like goal that we're trying to reach, which is, you know, and hopefully it's reflected. I think it's very powerfully reflected on our album cover, but it's a whole lot of gray and black, and you know, but butterflies are also fragile and beautiful and whatnot, and I think that's kind of what we were trying to portray, where it was just kind of like, yeah, there's pretty parts, but life is pretty gnarly, and you know, like, and it's kind of crazy, and I think we tried to touch on that with every single song on this record, not necessarily as like a strict concept, but as a you know, just as a theme.
Well, when a band tells me, oh, when I ask like how the making of an album is, and a band tells me, oh, we all mutually came together and it was such a creative, you know, mutual part. I don't buy that. I just don't. If you are in a band with 4 to 5 other people and you're making a dozen or so songs, you all have your own experiences, your own inspirations, your own ideas. There's gonna, of course, be like I don't want to say conflict because that sounds dramatic, but like you get the idea. There are going to be ideas that, you know, that differ. But do you think that maybe being all of you being in your own individual worlds is what helps Lightworkers sound, or do you all kind of need to really be in the same headspace in order to write together?
So, what's kind of crazy is that I actually love collaborating. That's like my bread and butter. I love being able to. So, Grayson and I write the music, you know, and then sometimes we'll have somebody come in, like our good friend Dan from Fit for a King and Phineas. You know, he'll be like, "Hey, I think you could spice this up," or, you know, like kind of like a producer. But it's basically what he was, you know, him and Bo Burchell from Seosin. And but when it comes to the like the preliminary start, um, you know, it's Grayson likes to write it on his own. He really does, but I like to be collaborative. And you know, obviously within, you know, you know, 2020 through, you know, some of 2021, you know, it was a lot harder to get together and whatnot. And so I think that kind of forced us to, it definitely forced me to write more ideas on my own, which actually ended up, you know, you hear parts from my personal writing sessions on Burn Scar. You hear it on Rusted Crown, also the title track, and a few other areas. But I think kind of how I view my role now is I'm going to write something that I think is sick that will hopefully spark an idea for Grayson. And part of the, and I think that's, to be honest with you, I think that works best for us, which is very different than how we, not very different, but it is different than how we did it on the first record. On the first record, I wanted to have a hand on every song. guitar wise, you know. On this song, I definitely let go a bit and was just kind of like, I just really want to focus on the vocals, making sure that the vocals and the lyrics are the best they could possibly be, but also still supporting Grayson as like the guitar player, that being his job, right? And just making sure that I'm feeding him ideas, and that way if he were to hear an idea, he could be like, oh, okay, that riff is sick, but I'm gonna Graysonize it, you know, and then just spice it up and make it so it sounds, and then I'll just like give him the thumbs up or give him some more suggestions. But he went through major writer's block, which is why I actually had to step up and start it off. But Burn Scar was that first song that really spearheaded the writing process, and destroyed his writer's block, and we were able to get moving. So I would say that Grayson and I, we debate a lot. We don't really argue, which is kind of funny. We're definitely we bicker more.
Well, you wouldn't be a band if you didn't. I mean, a band is basically the closest thing that you will get to legalize bigamy at this point. So, like,
Right.
But do you feel like that the evolution that an artist has, this is sort of like a little, speaking of debate, is kind of like a bit of a, I get different opinions on this. Do you feel like that evolution, how you evolve as an artist, that is something you have control over, or do you think that evolution just has to happen naturally?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think if you know that you want to go to a certain place, but you don't really know how to broach that area, you kind of have to adapt to that area, knowing that you're going to be in there. And that's a lot of how the Beautiful Decay was I knew I wanted to get heavier, and I pushed Grayson very hard. And there was many times where I apologized to him, saying like, no, like, I know what you're doing, but dude, this is just not it, you know? And it's just like, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. He's just like, fuck, man. Like, come on. Like, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, dude. It's just like, like, I hear blast beats over this part. Like, there has to be. Like, I know that you're not really into the European, like, death metal kind of, like, stuff or like, some of that kind of style. But, like, dude, like, we've got to evolve as well. And, like, and playing these new songs live already, our drummer Ryan, too, is like, yeah, this is where we should be.
What about inspiration, though? Do you feel like inspiration is something you could seek out and go looking for, or is that something that you have to kind of just let strike you?
For Grayson, that's definitely needs to just strike him, and that's why he had his writer's block. And then when you're, locked down and you're supposed to write a record, that really affected him. He needed to be able to live life and like kind of have interactions with people and have that translate to riffs, whereas for me, I probably do this a lot more than I should, but I read a lot of the news, and I'm very I interact with a lot of different people online because I guess I like to do, that's what I like to do. But I see a lot of things that have happened, especially in the last 3.5 years, that have really bummed me out. And so I was ready to go. Like, lyrically, a lot of this stuff on this new record is written about external stuff, whereas A Fury by Failure was a little bit more internal because, things were, a lot easier to write about, I think, on How the Beautiful Decay as opposed to Fury by Failure. There was a couple of songs where I struggled a little bit because I was like, all in all, dude, life is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, life is very beautiful. Sure, the world is so fucked up, because I think one message to say is the reason why the world seems so fucked up is because negativity sells. Let's just be real. Negativity fucking sells. It's not a coincidence that Deicide, that sings about Satanism and just hatred and pure misanthropy, or Cannibal Corpse that sings about ripping people open constantly, are the two most successful death metal bands of all time. There's a reason why unfortunately, these fucking assholes at the mainstream media, regardless of what side you're on, fucking do pretty well because all they're doing is talking about war and division and hatred and all that negativity sells. It's a great product. Unfortunately, people gravitate towards it. Everybody has those things that pisses them off one way or another. So negativity sells. And you could either use it as an armor, so as a source of inspiration to create art, or you could use it as an anchor that will just pull you down underneath.
Exactly. And I what I really try to do, and I'm really influenced by, we get a lot of comparisons to Killswitch, and which is a huge compliment to us, particularly the Howard era of Killswitch, and I love the records that he did. Like, but I'm actually very, very influenced by Jesse. And I really loved his lyrics. If you read, especially Alive or Just Breathing,
Oh my God,
those.
that's when it comes to lyricism, lyrics themselves. I think Jesse is one of the best, if not the best, lyricist of all time. Nothing changes in refusing to grow. Wisdom engages those who will grasp for something more. Is something I've molded my life after on the Incarnate album. So,
Oh, dude, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and he's still solid, and I love and that's why I'm very curious. Not to go off on a kill switch tangent here, but but that's why I'm really stoked for the new record because they've been very open about the fact that they're taking their time because they want to break the mold for themselves. So I'm just kind of like, dude, I can't wait. And like
see.
apparently,
Let's see what they do. Let's see what they do. They're almost kind of like the AC/DC of metalcore, where I think anything they put out at this moment is going to be okay because it's fucking Killswitch and they have their perfected sound. Because even Jesse has mentioned it on Doc Coyle's podcast, where like a lot of the band is like, good experimental idea, but this is kind of who we are. So like, and I don't fault them for that, but like at the same time, pushing boundaries is also a big step. So let's see what they can do. I think with Adam on their side, they'll do just fine.
Yeah, absolutely. But, so Jesse, like has had, I mean, like because he has this way about being angry, but I feel like he flips it in a way where it's like, okay, yes, I'm pissed, I'm depressed, et cetera, but let me be angry about being angry and try to figure out a way out of it. And, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
And so like, and I really gravitate towards that because I don't like feeling pissed off all the time. I don't like waking up and just being like,
Yeah.
like.
And no matter how cult black metal somebody tries to be, everybody has the desire to be happy one way or another. Like it's just a natural instinct. So I think I think we all create this art as a means of catharsis, as a means as a release. So I think in the end, nobody's angry 24/7, despite what the photo shoots may seem.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's part of the reason why on stage we, definitely try to have a little bit of fun, like that's why I'll, like Grayson will go up to me during like a really easy guitar part and he'll just like start making faces at me on stage and stuff or I'll just, when he's doing the solo, I'll just go up to him and just like, start giving him the metal fingers,
Yeah.
So like, we try to keep it fun, but I think lyrically that's something I do. I try not to take myself seriously, but I take the lyrics seriously, if that makes sense.
Definitely. I could definitely see that within the technical proficiency and the composition of the songs. So you succeed with that. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time, but most of all, just thank you so much for the music that you've put out. This is a fantastic album. I can't wait to see what Lightworker does next. Just what else could we be expecting for Lightworker in the near future, if you're allowed to say at this time, of course?
So we're definitely hitting the road. We're hitting the road with two bands called Dreamwake and Red Keep in May, and then we're going to be playing Connecticut at Capulet Fest with bands like August Burns Red, and Nothing More, and a handful of other. Haste the Day is also playing. And then we're just going to be, we're working on more tours and stuff. And there's also light talks, very, very light talks of where new material would go. And as I mentioned earlier, in this conversation, that heavier side is what really I'm gravitated towards, and I think the other guys are they've seen my wink and nudge, and I think they're nodding. So
hell yeah. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Lightworker. Be sure to check out their brand new album, How the Beautiful Decay. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.
See ya.